Thanks for coming tonight. We hope it'll be a very informative session. Again, I'm John Condino. I think most of you in this room have probably seen me before here. Tonight, I brought with me actually our staff, water wastewater staff that will be working on the majority of these projects. I thought it'd be a good idea for them, you folks, to get to meet them, and also for them to kind of see what goes on over here. These are the guys that are doing the work in the background, the technical work, all the actual engineering. Pete Baker, you've all seen Peter around here. Peter is our senior project manager for Seneca Falls. Senior managing engineer, excuse me, by Seneca Falls. Okay. Lucas Table is one of our engineers. Lucas, what's your title?
Basically a design engineer.
Design engineer, right? Right.
Yeah.
And the newest one on our team, working in our Rochester office now, is Leeson Harris. And Leeson's actually been over here working on a lot of the preliminary stuff. Okay, it's not working.
What's Lisa's title?
Leeson's title?
New person?
New person.
Engineer 2.
What we call an engineer 2. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. You're very welcome. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. You get it?
I'm not sure if the light is working, but I don't see anything coming out of the technical difficulties here.
I love it when we try to put these on.
Of course.
Yeah, no, we had
And I see light there.
I see light.
Let me find an engineer.
We don't have a radio engineer.
You know what? You want to go to
We need a video
We don't work with
engineer.
technology.
Give him a chalkboard they can draw a system for.
There you are. See? You brought me for a reason.
Oh, yeah. All right, yeah, you're just gonna hit, that's next.
So one of the things we want you to keep in mind tonight is we've got a lot of information to go over, both on the water side, on the wastewater side, a lot of things going on. But we want it to be a conversation, so please, if you've got questions, bring them up. We'll do our best to get you answers. We want to have this, frankly, more as a discussion if we could, than just a straight presentation by us. So feel free to raise your hands and ask away. And I'm going to turn it over to Peter. Time to begin.
Thanks, John.
Okay.
Yes, John said, I did a similar presentation to the town board back in March. At that point, really focused on sanitary sewer projects that B&L was working on. We have hard copies for the town board members are here. I have hard copies of the presentation. We did give one to Mr. Shaw, but I think there's 4 town board members here, so everyone get a copy of this. So again, this is, as Greg alluded to and John talked about, really just an information session on town-wide, water, state of the water sewer system, some specific projects we're working on, and some of our thoughts on work moving forward. Go ahead. Well, there we go. There's a purpose. I want to provide an overview of. I can't talk that fast. So, I just want to provide an overview of the water wastewater systems within the town. What some of the needs are. Some of those needs are being addressed right now with some of the design and projects we have going on, design and construction projects. And then just a quick discussion on financing towards the end. How much these projects costing, how are they going to be paid for in the future? So the first thing we're going to talk about, focus on is water within Seneca Falls. There's 3 components to the water system. And just to sidetrack, we've got 3 boards over here, so even if when I'm talking you have a specific question, you want to go up and take a look at it, that's fine. The one on the right is just kind of an overview of the water distribution system, the primary components for the water treatment and supply system within the town of Seneca Falls. The 2 drawings on the left provide an overview of one of the projects I'm going to talk about, but they also provide a nice snapshot of the overall sanitary sewer system within the town. So when we talk about water, there's 3 components. It's treatment, it's storage, and it's the distribution system. And we'll get to those. So just a real quick background, water in for the town of Seneca Falls is treated at the Seneca Falls treatment plant. Ironically enough, it's in Fayette. near Cayuga Lake. It's about 5 miles. I'm not sure if everybody is familiar with where the treatment plant is. It's about 5 miles south of here, right off Parker Road, near on the west shore of Cayuga Lake. There's an intake pipe that the water is drawn from. Within that intake pipe, a couple things happen. There's a chemical injection process to deal with water mussels, or zebra mussels rather. Basically, it's an oxidant to kind of keep the zebra mussels out of the intake. Water is pulled into there, we would call a low lift pump station. It's a series of pumps. It's essentially an intake station. That low lift pump station sucks the water out of the intake and pumps it into the treatment plant up here. Within the treatment plant, there's a series of processes. Primarily, you're looking to remove solids, and you want to disinfect the water prior to treatment. Water's tested, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So from the treatment plant, there's a high lift pump station. So there's a series of pumps that essentially pump that water about 5 miles north into the town into the storage tanks. So the current treatment plant that's within Seneca Falls was originally designed and permitted for about 3.5 million gallons per day. It's only doing about 1 million gallons per day, so there's excess capacity. There's a lot of treatment components within there, filtration units, pumps that are right now sitting idle, that are, because the plant's only putting out about 3.5 million or 1 million gallons per day. So simple math is about 2.5 million gallons per day of additional capacity within the treatment plant. As I mentioned before, and if you have any questions specific on what the treatment processes are, fire away. I don't want to get too detailed. Yes.
I'm going to get the microphone set up.
Okay. I can talk louder if that's.
It's on.
Oh, it's
Okay.
on.
Oh, it's on.
Yeah.
It's on.
Okay.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank
What's
you.
going to happen?
So I would, because it's taped, you're going to have to stay kind of right like here.
Okay. Is it better? Okay. If you, as I said, if anybody has any questions on specific treatment processes, engineering type things, I tried to keep this pretty high level. You know, I can talk to you afterwards. Anything? Do you have a question back there?
Yes, the disinfection, I want you to explain that, and if it doesn't involve blue algae possible treatment and so on, I want you to touch on where that would be dealt with.
I'm sorry,
The disinfection, what
Okay.
really is that?
Okay, well, yeah, I have a slide for that, so,
Okay.
good question. Okay, excellent. There we go. Good. Well-timed question. Basically, you know, the final part of water treatment is disinfection. You've got, you know, pathogens, bacteria that need to be destroyed. There's specific criteria within EPA, Department of Health to destroy those. Typically, it's done with an oxidant. The most common is a chlorination type system. The town of Seneca Falls has used two processes for many years, a chlorination process, which essentially is injection they use a chlorine gas. In 2012, they converted to what's called a chloramine system. A chloramine is a type of chlorine product. It's chlorine mixed with ammonia. That's done at the treatment plant. The benefit for that, the chloramine system, is it's got a longer life it's a little more stable product than chlorine gas would be that dissolved in water. Basically, they're oxidants. They do react with constituents in water, so they have a certain shelf life. So within the treatment system, you need to demonstrate that you've got what's called a residual, a lower level of that chemical that stays within the treatment process through the distribution system, and essentially at the end of pipe at the users. So the two systems, the current system is the chloramine system. The town has the capability and has actually had to, they've switched back to chlorination temporarily over the summer. So those are the primary, and additionally, one more step is a UV disinfection step in advance of the chlorination process. UV is basically, it's ultraviolet light that provides an immediate death or kill of the bacteria. The chlorines provide a residual, so whatever bacteria, pathogens are in the system, the chlorines are to address them. After the treatment, what the town is required to do, every town that has a treatment plant is required to test the water. On an annual basis, the town does a full suite of these tests. Many of the tests are done more frequently, and a lot of these tests are done within the distribution system as well. This is the list of the tests that are performed. Now up top, I have it highlighted The water quality report is available for the public. It's posted on the town's website. So that's senecafalls.com. If you click on the water sewer tab, it'll take you right to that report. The report provides the analytical data, the results of the water quality testing, provides a summary of what the water treatment process is, and the work that was done. The current report is for the year 2015, and towards the end of the year, they'll publish the data for 2016.
Question.
Yes.
Is Cayuga Lake show high levels of salt like Seneca Lake? Not as much, I guess Seneca Lake is the highest, but...
Cayuga.
No.
Yeah, our intake is Cayuga Lake.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's Cayuga Lake, from my understanding, is I think Seneca Lake has typically a higher TDA, total dissolved solids,
Yeah.
as we call it, than Cayuga Lake.
yeah, but is it high in relatively speaking to freshwater bodies?
It is a freshwater body. Seneca Lake typically, I think, has a higher natural salinity
Yeah.
than Cayuga Lake.
From the salt mines or from the salt veins?
I believe so, yeah,
Yeah.
that's my understanding. It's natural, yeah, I mean, primarily, that's my understanding, is that's a natural deposit within Seneca Lake. So this, yeah, the data that was there, this is basically what you'll see if you go on the report. It's certainly not intended for anyone to look at or scrutinize at this point, but this is the published data that's out there. So just give you an example of what you'll see if you go on the website. So from the treatment system, we've treated, we've disinfected. In order to make the system run smoothly, the town has 2 water storage tanks. The way water works, as you all know, is your taps are on in the morning, they're typically on at night. So there's a demand curve that we call as engineers. So the demand for water is not a straight same amount over 24 hours. In order to address this, we put equalization tanks in the process. So the town has 2 equalization tanks. One is the Van Rensselaer tank. The second is the Auburn Road tank. I'm going to talk about those a little bit more. So really the primary intent there is to provide a constant flow of water. If you turn the tap on, then water's there. And that's one of the projects that the town's been undertaking this summer. We'll talk a little bit about those and what we saw with those projects. Go ahead. That's the Van Rensselaer tank. I'm sure most people know. It's on the south side, south of the canal. That tank was installed in 1962. About 20 years ago, the village at the time did a interior-exterior reco. The tanks they're very large, they require maintenance, and it's pretty critical in order to keep them functioning, that they are periodically inspected continuously. They're periodically coated on the outside to prevent rust, on the inside to prevent corrosion as well. So currently, that tank is undergoing a recoating process. The contractor that the town has contracted with, Utility Services Group, they're doing the interior portion of the tank. That's a specialized coating. I believe it's a urethane-based coating. So that basically the tank, the interior of the tank is clean, sandblasted, residuals removed, and they come in and they basically paint the tank. The interior work is currently done, and we expect currently the contractor's indicated the exterior will be completed in 2017. That tank holds about 1,500,000 gallons. It's about 100 feet from the base of the ground surface to the base of the tank. The tank itself is about 20 feet high. And really what the intent there is you're pumping water into that. That's essentially the high point in the town, and that's where the water flows downhill. That provides the pressure to the distribution system for most of the town. The Auburn Road storage tank is located north off of Auburn Road, 5 and 20. That was installed in 1990. The town, from the treatment plant up to the village and then into the northern part of the village, there's a slight increase in elevation. So the northern part of the town really requires essentially a higher pressure zone, is what it's been referred to. Prior to that, there was a booster pump station that supplied that. It was kind of a maintenance headache to keep that running. So in 1990, the village erected the smaller Auburn Road storage tank. It's a smaller tank. It doesn't serve as large a population base as the Van Rensselaer tank does. So that tank did undergo the recoat. That tank has been painted on the outside and the interior. That was done late spring, early summer. So during that process, below the tank there's a booster pump station that feeds, basically the water is discharged to the booster pump station. All that booster pump does is it pumps water to the top of the tank. that provides that additional pressure. While that tank was offline, the town was operating that booster pump continuously to maintain to keep the water out of the tank and allow the tank to be recoated. That process required, I think there was about a 30-day process. That was 30 to 45 days or so. Okay, so the tank was offline for about 45 days. Required a lot of extra babysitting while the tank was operating. That tank's about 160 feet high. As I mentioned, it's a higher elevation, requires a higher pressure. And that primarily serves the northern area of the town. There's kind of a line of demarcation. I think Oak Street, Cuba Street, and then I believe Blackbrook Road kind of bounds the areas of the town. Within that, it's kind of interesting. There's actually a series of check valves that kind of keep the two areas separate, because if that fed the whole town, that essentially have a backwash effect, and those areas of town wouldn't have the pressure. All that pressure would be towards the south. So in summary, just talking about water treatment and the distribution system. The water treatment plant is operating, it's under capacity, it's in good condition. It exceeds the requirements for water quality. So I think that's the good news message we're here to discuss is, from a water treatment standpoint, things are going well. With the storage tank, they were in need of, it's been 20 years or so for maintenance, and the town elected this year to enter into that. Historically, that's been done kind of on a contractual basis, a one-time contract. This year, the town elected to go to contract with Company Utility Services Group. They provide a constant annual maintenance, and part of that process is they will go in, they painted the tanks, that cost is annualized over time. So instead of paying typically what could be $1 million to $2 million line item to paint a tank, that cost has been spread over the 20-year contract period. I believe it's a 20-year contract. So really what that does is that takes the onus, the responsibility to maintain those tanks, and puts it on the contractor. So with the district, once we're in the tanks, you've got a pretty extensive distribution system here, a pretty extensive, pretty old distribution system. The current series of water mains throughout the town, the former village, the town, it extends roughly about 80 to 85% of the current town properties are served by water. So most of the town has public water available. We did some rough math. We're estimating about 100 miles of water distribution piping within the town. Remember, this goes from 5 miles south of the village, northwards to up to 318 near the Montezuma Winery, Vince's Park, essentially. And I think the key thing here is just there's a wide range. I mean, this is the former village. It's an aged infrastructure, so there's water pipes that have probably been in play since the early 1900s. In the town, prior to dissolution, the town had a project to essentially try to provide water to some of the outlying areas. That project was underway, it wasn't completed. So a lot of the areas outside are newer construction. Typically these days are using like plastic polyethylene pipe, PVC pipe, materials that aren't necessarily or more resilient to corrosion. So we talked about the age distribution system, primarily in the former village. There's pipes in there that have been in the ground for probably greater than 100 years. Lower resilience. They're going to be more prone. They're metal pipes. They're iron pipes. They are going to wear down over time. So they're going to be more prone to breaks. They're iron pipes. So they will corrode. The corrosion process typically is a scale, or we call it tuberculation. Not a great word, but that's the term we use in the water industry to talk about corrosion within pipes. Basically, it's a metallic scale that forms on the inside of the pipe. The primary issue of that is it just restricts that cross-sectional area of the pipe, the amount of water that can actually flow through that pipe. So what that leads to in the short term, increased flushing, the smaller pipes will tend to require more maintenance and additional repairs. So as we've talked and noticed through the town, primarily Miller and Rumsey Street, there's been a lot of additional water breaks this year. Part of the second piece of that's exasperated it a little bit with the tanks offline, it's required more manual operation of that system. So those pressure surges that the tanks typically will handle, they haven't been available. So there's been a lot of, with these type of systems, pumps turning on and off will lead to surges. That's going to, with the aged infrastructure, that's going to lead to more breaks. So you mentioned 2016, the water main breaks. I think this late in the summer, the crew was out, a lot of repairs. I think they had 10 near the period between August and Labor Day, primarily Rumsey and Miller Street. What we found in this process is that some of these older areas, specifically Rumsey Street, there was a 4-inch water main that was providing a lot of service. That's a pretty small pipe. Typically, normally design, if you're designing a water sewer, you're looking at a 6 to an 8-inch pipe minimum. And typically that pipe's plastic, it flows fairly smoothly. So certainly the 4-inch line was, given the age and that size of the pipe, something that was concerning. So we projected that running down Miller Street, there's likely going to be some additional work as we go down Miller Street. That's been the initial issue that we've identified. We certainly recognize that there's more areas of low pressure, low flow. So with that, what are the future plans? I mean, we've identified the fact that there's aged infrastructure. There's been projects that have been put on the table over the years. Nothing's really ever come to completion, but essentially you've got within the older village, within areas, kind of the furthest areas where you have low flow, those are going to be more problematic. We identify the fact that there's going to be some required maintenance. As engineers, typically what we would do is develop a hydraulic model of the system. We'd look at, what are the pipes we can predict, what the pipe flow, what the pipe pressures are going to be. We calibrate that with testing throughout the system to see those tests we perform, are they meeting the predicted pressures and flows. And those are the kind of the keys we use to identify where the issues potentially are. Is the system behaving the way it's supposed to be, or is it behaving indicative of pipe, some restrictions within the pipe? So that's that coupled with identifying non-routine maintenance, where are the hot spots, meaning where's the town had to focus a lot of energy with repairing the brakes, valves throughout the network. I think the other piece of this is that's come up is looking at expansion. As we mentioned before, most of the town is served, but there are areas within the town that aren't served. So one of the early ones we're looking at is along Route 89. There's been some users out there that have expressed interest in obtaining water service. So that's some of the good news, coupled with the fact that we have a treatment plant, we have the capacity to provide the water out there. So we're looking at possible expansion out there. And then beyond that, within the town of Tyre, the Montezuma Winery is a facility that's expressed interest in water. That's a project that's going to be pursued next year between Tyre and Seneca Falls. And then the other thing that we've looked at that's been more discussed in a greater length is just additional emergency interconnects. There's currently, I believe, 2 along 5 and 20 between the town of Village Waterloo system and the town. I believe the interconnect was operated in 2014. There's some additional ones as we go north to provide, in the event of emergency, if the tank is down for some reason, if there's a water main break, those emergency connections just provide a more robust system, the ability to provide, constant service. So those are some of the things that we're exploring. So that's it for water. Question?
Yeah, if you could refresh our memory, the 2 towers, ballpark figure, what was the cost?
To install or to
The original cost of the tower?
No, what was done year to date on the Auburn Road, what's still to be completed over at Van Rensselaer? There was some sort of dollar figure, capital appropriation.
The total cost of that project is probably, both projects, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of about $3 million.
$3 million.
Now, with the Utility Services Group, the contract that the town currently is under, they spread that cost out over several years.
No, I understand. Okay, so it's $3 million. I think in an earlier presentation, there was much more in the Van Rensselaer tank than just coating inside and painting outside. Was there circulation?
There's a mixing component in that as well, yes.
And
Both tanks.
what's the portion of that cost out of that $3 million?
The mixing system that's being put in, actually both tanks,
Mixing system.
round numbers, they're about $100,000 a piece.
And how many are in there?
But there's a mixing system in each tank, both tanks, one in each. Yeah, I mean, it's a mixing
Does that
system
take,
designed for the size of the
Does
tank.
that take our tank from yesterday being a Chevy to the tanks today being a Cadillac?
It does, it does. Yeah, it helps turn the water over, keep it fresh. It helps with the water quality. Essentially what you end up with is you don't have any stale water that's being in the tank.
So out of that 3 million, it's safe to say maybe $250,000 is that portion of the circulator?
Upgrades.
Okay, thank you.
And then the
Prevent
mixers
size
were
also.
new also. And that's
Yeah,
also-
Prevent size.
Good.
Which I think 2015 was probably a pretty significant issue. And those are new, the mixers had not previously been in there, so.
You answered my question, thank you.
Okay, now we're going to talk about wastewater, which is not as nice, but it's necessary. So like water, wastewater, there's two components. It's the opposite, obviously. It's, water, you treat it, and then you distribute it. Wastewater, you generate it, and then you're flushing it down the toilet and into the collection system, and then ultimately into the treatment plant. So collection conveyance system, consists of gravity sewers, pump stations, force mains. And I'll get into some of the details as far as how much, but with wastewater, the coverage within the town isn't as extensive as it is with water. People generally tend to want water before they care about sewers. And, in a rural area, leach fields are fairly common. They don't work great in Seneca County in many areas, but, for the lion's share of the former village, most of the town, there is sanitary sewer available. And the cost to provide sanitary sewer versus water is pretty prohibitive, substantially more expensive to provide a wastewater service for someone than it is to provide fresh water, or clean or water main. So the wastewater is treated at the town treatment plant located just short or just on the downstream side of, I'm not sure which lot number it is, on the south side. And that's basically, it's a conventional wastewater treatment system, initial screening process, clarification, which is essentially just settling the solids, biological treatment, which is probably performed in 99% of any kind of municipal treatment plant. Essentially is aeration, mixing the wastewater with oxygen. There's bacteria in the wastewater that will consume the organics within the wastewater. Following that, there's our settlement process called secondary clarification, and there's a disinfection step as well. So we're actively working on several wastewater projects right now. Really we kind of looked at what we're working on and tried to lump them into like what are we trying to meet? What are our objectives? So really there's two objectives, and I'll get to why some of these work for Seneca Falls. But the initial one is really just to kind of enhance, maintain development or enhance development. It's facilities, commercial facilities are more apt to want to develop if they know they have sanitary sewer. A larger facility can't rely on a leach field for many areas. So in order to get larger commercial retail within the area, having an infrastructure that includes sanitary sewer is pretty vital to that. Now with that, the town, as I mentioned before, talking about the water treatment plant, it's currently sized about 3.5 million gallons a day. It's doing about slightly less than 1 million gallons a day. Ironically enough, that's about the same numbers for the wastewater treatment plant. It's permitted for 3.5 million gallons a day. The wastewater treatment plant does about 1.6 million gallons a day on average. We'll get to the reason why that is, because additional water goes into the wastewater treatment plant than just the water out of your tap. Again, with the other part of this is with the enhancement of development, you've got an aging infrastructure. The sewers, within the former village, similar to the water, they probably went in slightly after water, but there's a lot of older sewer pipes within there. Using brick and mortar, typical construction that's not practiced anymore. So there's issues with the sewer system leaking. When the sewer system leaks, we think of it as infiltration inflow. There's storm water, there's groundwater that gets into the system. It's additional water that needs to be treated at the treatment plant. So to back up on the wastewater treatment plant, as I mentioned, is permitted about 3.5 million gallons a day. Currently averages about 1.6 million gallons a day going into it. There's about 1.9 on average million gallons per day remaining capacity. So there's definitely, the treatment plant is operating below efficiency similar to the water treatment plant. What we see though, and some studies we did a few years ago, and actually have been going on for several years, there are some, due to infiltration issues with stormwater, groundwater, during rain events, we'll see some peak flows going into the plant that exceed 6 to 10 million gallons per day on an hourly basis. So shortly after a significant rain event, that plant will see a really high inflow going in there. For wastewater, it shouldn't happen. Wastewater is, remember, is coming out of your house. It's coming out of your taps, showers, washing machines. That's really where the wastewater comes. What we found in Seneca Falls is, and it's work that's been going on for years, but just primarily as a result of the aged infrastructure, the way things used to be built, a lot of the unknowns with how things were built. There's a lot of interconnections between sanitary and storm sewers within the system. The aged piping, the old manholes lead to leaking as well. Within the treatment plant, there's a what we call an equalization tank, an EQ tank. We believe it's about 3 million gallons. That tank's been there for a while, and it's not in great shape. So when we get these surges, a lot of times that initial slug of water, that tank will store it. They'll use it to kind of store it and kind of help bleed the water back into the system. It hasn't been used extensively in the last few years, but during a high rain event, it will be used. The DEC, who basically regulates and oversees the treatment plant, they've expressed concerns with the condition of that tank. And some of the work we're doing is really in response to that, is just to kind of address what needs to be done with that tank down the road. That's an overview of the treatment plant. I'm going to drop the mic quick. This is the EQ tank I mentioned. That's basically the first thing water will flow into. That's about 3 million gallons. It looks like it's in great shape. When you get to it close, it's not in great shape. The town, kind of the ongoing maintenance that needs to happen. There's been, they go in, they weld repair, spot weld. So the tank is really, if you fill it up, quite frankly, the tank will leak. So a lot of times the level is kept as low as possible, if not used at all. From the EQ tank, the influent control building, that's the initial screening. Rags, whatever comes through comes through the sewer system, those solids are removed there. Then it's primary settling, which is the initial shot for dropping out a lot of the grit solids within there. And then the aeration tanks, essentially the wastewater is mixed with oxygen to biologically degrade the organics within there. And then they go through a secondary clarification or settling process, and then disinfection. So those are the processes. This is located, I think, on the south side of the canal, right past the original Elizabeth Cady Stanton School, down on the canal. So the projects that we've been working on, tied to kind of meet the same goals we talked about before, as the development-related projects. There's been some that we're working on that are solely related to ongoing development and possibly bringing in some more wastewater flow into the treatment plant. And then there's infrastructure-related projects as well, just identified specifically to address some of the aging infrastructure. I'll talk real quickly about the development-related projects. So the first one that when I was here in March, we talked about, and actually that's the one we have shovels in the ground is ongoing, is the Route 414 sanitary sewer upgrade. Following that, there's the Kingdom Road pump station. And then those are the two really we've identified as more related to future development needs, additional conveyance, bringing it to the treatment plant. The infrastructure-related projects, I've also identified Kingdom Road there. Kingdom Road is kind of, project is twofold. Part of it is to provide increased capacity for additional flows coming from areas north, Tyre, Junius, with some projects that are happening there. The second part of that is the current Kingdom Road pump station is undersized, but as well as the force main that discharges to it. It's an old force main. That's probably some 1960s era infrastructure. It's aged, and it could be, so we're looking at replacing that force main. So twofold, the force main really needs to be, absent of any expansion, probably needs to be addressed and upgraded. With the expansion, provides the opportunity to, for some additional capacity. The key thing that, with the infrastructure we talked about, we've alluded to the rehabilitation of sanitary sewer, infiltration, inflow issues throughout the existing collection system. That primarily includes about 3 major components. There's about 170 manholes. In 2013, we did inspection, I believe, of every manhole within the town. We've identified about 170 that are in poor repair, some type or another. Some require replacement, some just simply require replacement of the frame, inflow dishes. So the extent of repair for individual manholes varies. For the lion's share of them, though, they're constructed of brick and mortar. The mortar is degraded. They leak, so if you open it up, you'll open up a manhole. You won't see just water run to the bottom of the wastewater. You'll see water leaking in to the manholes. What that does is that's clean water, that's groundwater that's flowing in that requires, that basically is going to the treatment plant, and it's water that's being treated unnecessarily. So with the manholes, the primary mode of repair is going to be relining the manholes. Typically use a cured-in-place lining system. It's a project we're in the design phase right now, and there's some additional investigation steps we'll be going through. The big part of the with sanitary sewer rehab is there's a lot of catch basins, storm sewer catch basins, curbside gutters that we've identified that either are connected directly into the sanitary sewer, or given the age of the pipe, there's a leak. So you can certainly see, we've cameraed many sewers, we've seen the fact that storm sewer is leaking into the pipes. So part of this project is going to be identifying where the catch basins are and looking at rerouting them. So disconnecting them, either direct connection or an indirect connection from the sanitary sewer, and routing that storm sewer into the storm sewer collection system.
So a little question here. So Kingdom Road Pump Station, Force Main, so is that so the sanitary, it's pumping it because it's at a lower elevation?
Yeah, I'll talk about that. Basically, well, just to back up
And
real
is
quick.
it under pressure too? Do you need pressure to pump the waste in the line?
Yeah,
To
so,
get it up the elevation?
yeah, just to back up a little bit, we talked about the collection system, and I probably didn't go over this in enough detail. Typically, with Seneca Falls, is generally flat. So with the collection system, the easy way to do it from a user is a gravity sewer. You maximize gravity. It's free water. You don't have to pay to move the water. But there's always areas where you're going to have low points, primarily around the canal. The canal tends to be a natural kind of topographic low point. So there's, I think, 3 pump stations situated right around the canal. So what happens is water flows into that particular area. The pump station essentially just gives a pressure, and it just pushes the water. At that point, you can't. The system itself is currently probably from the current extent along really the 318 where the petrol station is, to where the treatment plant is. It's I think it's about 6 or 7 miles, I'm going to guess. And that's, that to gravity, you can't gravity sewer that. So really what you do is it'll gravity flow at a low point, it'll pump it, run into a pump station. Essentially it's a big well, and there's a pump at the bottom of it. And that pump will just push it into the force main is really water that's flowing under pressure. You can tie into those with, like, small individual users can tie into those with a smaller pump that discharges a higher pressure. But typically it's much easier to send your sanitary sewer into. So most of the village has gravity sewer around there.
So the stormwater, you can reroute it, huh? There are separate stormwater pipes from sanitary pipes?
Yes,
In town?
the system
Already.
and the way there's 3 systems. If you go down any street, you're going to have water, stormwater, and sanitary sewer. So really the intent is you don't want stormwater and aged infrastructure. We call it combined sewer overflows. Just combined sewers. A lot of older towns have that, and it's a condition that you want those 2 separated. Certainly the treatment plant end of things, if you have a lot of clean water going in, it costs, every gallon of water that comes in, it costs money to to treat that water. It's not efficient, and it's not, you're going to see a lot more spikes with it. So you'll go from a dry system to, in the event of you get a 1-inch rainfall in the middle of, the end of day in August, where the system's been running low, all of a sudden you've got, a huge spike in the volume coming in. It's extremely difficult to treat and manage that. Really, you want, you want similar quality water moving in, coming into the system. It's coming in generally, there's going to be fluctuations, but you don't want a huge fluctuation in with storm water. So the goal is to separate these two.
Once they are separated, then storm water is not treated at all.
Typically, no, stormwater, we refer to that as gray water. Most of the stormwater within the town, there's outfalls along the canal. I mean, it's stormwater, so it's, it's contacting the roofs, it's on the roads. That's typically how it's done. To treat stormwater it's a whole separate process, and it's usually not the, it's typically clean water. We call it gray water because it's certainly not water you're going to drink, but it's not contaminated that sanitary wastewater is. You're going to get more sediments and that type of thing.
This question, by the way, nice job, because I think we all realize we have a bigger problem with sewage than we do with water. Being a professional engineer with these old infrastructure, 6-7 miles, what percentage of what's going through these sewer lines is actually leaked out? Could you give a percentage? I mean, is it 10%?
No,
Is it
I
5%?
wouldn't even come close to 10%. It's really, that's hard to quantify. It really depends on, our primary issue is where these sewers are. Typically, these sewers are installed fairly deep. They're going to be below the groundwater table. The primary, it's the opposite. It's water leaking in. Because with gravity sewer, when you start at 5 feet deep, but by the time you get to the end of a run, you could be, 10, 15 feet deep, which usually is going to be below the groundwater table. So, and those gravity sewer is not flowing under pressure. So it's a line that's flowing, you've got water that wants to get in that pipe. That's just how the difference in what we call hydraulic head is going to push.
But it is safe to say water coming in, but there's probably water sewer getting out.
Certainly nothing's leak-proof. To put a percentage on that, I couldn't even come close to what that is.
And the reason I ask is, many people here in the audience have a concern that I have, is leaching. We had a discussion earlier, I believe, about 75,000 gallons a day. Am I correct in that?
Pre-treated leachate.
Treated leachate.
So could I assume that some of that 75,000 gallons of pre-treated leachate doesn't all get to the wastewater facility?
The initial discharge is through under the force main, it's a double-walled pipe. So there's at the discharge point, we call it double-walled pipe, is a primary carrier pipe, and there's a containment pipe around that. That's tested basically.
That's out on 414?
On 414. That does discharge with gravity.
About what we have, our old aging infrastructure that we currently have,
That
we
would-
all know has to be improved.
Yeah, that section discharges to a gravity sewer. It's going to be deeper below the groundwater table, so
But it's
that
safe
water's
to
coming
say, being a professional engineer, that there is leakage of leachate.
Brad,
wouldn't say
I
that,
think
so.
the key point is, as Pete was trying to explain, that the problem with a sewer system is, first of all, you got a force main, which is you're pumping uphill, okay? That's a sealed system. Then you have your gravity collection lines, all right? And the old lines have a tendency to let water in. There's nothing really that's going on, okay? In fact, you ask, what the percentage would be. I dare say that there's little, if any, going through that sewage system, whatever it may be, whether it's normal domestic sewage and/or some of the pre-treated leachate that comes in. It's mostly water that's coming into those gravity lines because they're old, got cracks.
I understand, but I just...
So I would say...
The question I have a concern as
Sure
a
you do.
taxpayer that some of this leachate is possibly leaking between 414 and the wastewater facility. The second part of the question is, with all the major development, Del Lago, 318 corridor, SMI, 414, all new piping, per se, last
Yep.
10 years,
Yep.
coming into this aging infrastructure.
That's one of the projects that we're talking about, the
And
Kingdom
I'm
Road
talking
Force
about-
Main.
And I'm all for
They
future,
will-
but current state.
It will all come through new lines, all the way down, pretty much almost to the treatment plant itself. It'll all come out down the bridge and then go into a relatively new line that goes into the treatment plant.
But today, it goes through the current infrastructure.
It comes through part of it, yeah.
And tomorrow being 2017, will that be coming through the current infrastructure?
Hopefully by next year, we'll have the new force main in, so it'll be all coming through relatively new.
Is that part of the presentation?
Yeah, and actually, that's part of the project that we're working on, is to upgrade those pipes, so that all that new development, all the new sewage coming down is going through relatively new infrastructure. It's larger in size, it's newer. You know, we're taking it away from some of the older sections.
Thank you.
Yeah. Where were we?
Just, yeah, and minor, we talked about some of the larger projects. Some of the smaller projects we're working on, these are more indicative of just the aging infrastructure. There's a couple within the town, we talked about those low-lying areas. There's a couple 1960s era pump stations in the town that they're aged. One of them is right by the community center that handles their very low flow. Just things that are, as these things age, they require replacement. Those are projects we're working on. The EQ tank is going to be one in the future once we address the I&I issue, identify really what is the need for an EQ tank. The hope is that it's going to be much smaller, obviously, whether or not it's needed in the future once I&I issues and we've identified the fact we've got a steadier flow of wastewater going into the system. And then wastewater treatment plant, the current infrastructure equipment there does age, typically 20 years if you get a piece of equipment. The next one is the initial screening. It's a project that B&L is working on with the town to look at for next year, replacing that particular unit. So the wastewater treatment plant units that's just part of the nature of the beast, as equipment lasts so long. It's a well-maintained system, so equipment tends to last longer within, I think, the water treatment plant and the wastewater treatment plant in Seneca Falls, and compared to what we've seen in other facilities. So they get the most out of what the equipment they have there, but it is going to, everything does have a shelf life.
Just a matter of clarification. Brad, you and I had a conversation before we got started. I really want to clarify. Pete's talking about a couple of the small pump stations, and we talked about the fact that, and Joe can verify this, over the last several years, most of the major, in fact, all the major pumping stations have all been upgraded. New pumps, new control systems, generators, etc. So the majority of the pump stations, there's quite a few of them around the town.
And maybe this question should go to Joe.
Yeah.
And backup pumps also.
And backup pumps.
Which question?
Can you say honestly, nothing's leaking between 414 and here?
I can't say that. I can't say that about anything. I know one thing. I think more importantly is the stormwater that has homes still connected to it is much more important that we need to fix.
Shame on all of us.
Then we're working on that, doing sewer inspections and identifying them, but that's not easy to identify. But that's something that we can measure when we find it. This other thing is looking for ghosts or maybes, in my opinion.
Well, Brad, when I was on trustee, I remember Mayor Smith saying leachate back then was coming through like molasses. And like John said now, it's like muddy water coming down through.
Not even muddy water.
I wouldn't even say so.
No, it's clear. It's clear.
It's clear. But before, I remember when I got on as a trustee.
Well, that was when
we
they
had concern back then, and when you were there, Brad, that it was.
And that's when they were setting just their full strength leachate. Now they are pre-treating it with a reverse osmosis system.
There's no more black film on all the pump parts. It's fairly clear.
Yeah.
Can't really.
We have all the data.
Worry about the water.
So who gets all the heavy metals from the leachate?
Excuse me?
Who gets all the heavy metals from the leachate?
They do pre-treat it up there.
Do they collect the heavy metals and?
The treatment system, they're using a reverse osmosis system that basically, the intent of that is to remove primarily ammonia. Ammonia has historically been, it's very high in leachate. And ammonia is problematic, organic. The system that the landfill uses removes heavy metals pretty readily. It's really just, it's designed to remove, essentially at the molecular level, specific contaminants within water. Ammonia is one that's more difficult to treat. It was designed to treat it for that. So I think, currently, I think that the landfill, I think the industrial permit they have is 50 pounds per day of ammonia is what they're allowed to within the overall, and I wish I could tell you the number off the top of my head, within typically the town of Seneca Falls, they're probably seeing several hundred pounds a day of ammonia coming into the overall system. So it's,
So then when the ammonia gets to the Seneca Falls treatment plant, what happens? Is that filtered?
Well, ammonia is treated biologically. Ammonia,
Treated,
there's,
yeah.
when we talk about organics and what, in
Yeah.
municipal wastewater and in leachate, there's what we call biochemical oxygen demand, which is more of a catch-all for organics, and ammonia, which is a very specific nitrogen compound.
Right.
Both of those are treated the same way. It's bacteria that are within the wastewater, and then mixing with, they need oxygen. So the organics, either the biochemical oxygen demand or the ammonia are the food source. There's bacteria in there. They utilize oxygen, and they consume those and they break them down. So for ammonia, it's broken down to some other compounds, nitrates, and I don't want to get too technical, but nitrates and nitrates. BOD is broken down. So that's tested coming in and coming out of the plant. That's the ongoing
It's
testing that
basically
Jim does.
turned back into nitrogen, which is basically most of
But
all.
ammonia already is nitrogen.
It's a type of,
Yeah,
it's a type of nitrogen, but it's regulated. So yeah, there's, I
Yeah.
mean, there's ammonia, nitrates,
Yeah.
nitrogen gas. So we're getting very, very technical on this, but, so
Yeah,
ammonia
that's the
is
big
certainly
thing. The
a,
ammonia is the big thing that is the big polluter, whether it's in the air or in the water. That's the danger from the dump that we're as human beings and animals are, subject to, so.
ammonia really isn't, well, ammonia is within, basically landfill leachate has higher concentrations of most of the organics that are in residual waste, or municipal wastewater, BOD, ammonia. That there are heavy metals in leachate, heavy metals in the water. It is the treatment system they use does remove those heavy metals. So the water coming out of the reverse osmosis system is fairly clean compared to like a biological system that will still have harder time to remove some of those heavy metals. It's physically, there's a barrier they have that physically essentially filters those larger molecules out. This is
Being a professional engineer, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I guess I am, do we have a bigger problem future state, whether it's 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road with leachate versus odor, or is odor the bigger problem of the two?
I didn't come prepared to talk about landfill issues. I don't think leachate is, I understand how I understand how the landfills are constructed and the fact that, the liner systems they use, there's a double composite liner system. B&L does a lot of solid waste work. We understand how landfills work. Leachate, I don't think it's important for the landfill to control it and basically remove it and have it treated.
But what happens when the landfill closes, if and when? Some of the leachate today is going through our aging infrastructure, and then some is being trucked out. Could I assume once it's closed, and this may be a couple years or 30 years, all the leachate will come through our infrastructure?
Nope, but I'm not sure what you're...
Or is the plan to always truck some of that leachate after it's closed?
Yeah, I understand that the way landfills are regulated, that landfill may cease operation, but they are obligated, it's called a post-closure.
The 360
plan.
Yeah.
Correct. So they're still obligated to handle the leachate. If there's still odors, handle those. So it's not as if the landfill's closed and everybody goes away. Operation is still there, and they still have to address those issues. So obviously, as the landfill is closed and it's capped, the leachate eventually goes away in all which is.
Well, that's good information. Good information, because you've been at some of these meetings saying, the employees are all going to go away tomorrow. That's not the case.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not as if they shut they let the last truck in, dump it, and then lock the key and walk away.
But is it
There's a
safe
lot
to
of
say
post-closure
sometime,
operations.
and maybe it's our great-grandchildren, all the leachate will come through our lines,
Yeah, it'll eventually, it'll literally leach completely through and essentially,
I think the question is, they have a volume leachate they're handling right now.
yeah.
The current treatment system handles a percentage of that. They have to manage it, so they're sending a lot of it off-site. Under post-closure, the volume they need to manage will go down. So the amount that they will ever send to the town is really going to be limited by what the treatment plant can accept. So really, what they're currently doing, the volume that they're discharging is a lot higher than it was years ago when they were doing raw leachate because of it comes out to how many pounds per day. That's really what's driven by. So the concentration that they generate the treatment system is probably 10 to 100 times lower than what it would be for raw leachate. They're allowed to discharge more because the concentration's in there. So it's water that has it's treated leachate that has much lower concentrations of these constituents there. So in
Just
the
so I
future,
can sleep tonight, do you drink a glass of water at our wastewater facility as it goes in through the Hugo Lake watershed?
no.
You shouldn't do that
Wastewater?
anyway. You
I
shouldn't do
wouldn't.
that in any wastewater plant.
Yeah, I would never advise
I
anyone
don't know
to
these
do that.
questions, but I have a concern, we have a concern about
Well,
leachate.
a wastewater treatment
That's a
plant,
good answer, by the way.
a wastewater treatment plant is not designed to provide drinking water. It's-
85% removal is the law. We do about 95 to 97 of all BOD and
So
TSS.
taking that one step further, let's just say 10 or 15% gets into our watershed.
It could be, that's not.
And that's probably
Legal, yes.
Okay, so some leachate does get into our watershed currently.
I would not say leachate.
Yeah, the term at some point it stops becoming leachate. I mean, they've treated it so.
There's some ammonia that is.
We're talking about
Some
contaminants, so
TSS, some
BOD,
BOD.
ammonia,
Thanks.
solids.
You-
Those
you
are
answered
really
it.
the thing we look at.
Thank you.
So 414, this is the first project, I mentioned this, shovels in the ground, this work is done. This work, this project was really in direct response to the Del Lago development. They needed a source a mechanism to address their wastewater. They came to the town, they are funding the project in its entirety. So what that entails is, along 414, there's existing infrastructure, from Petro down to I guess the new Seneca Meadows, it's the Route 414 pump station, which is the new Blackbrook channel, a couple of miles down 414. There's a pump station there. That project will replace that pump station, upgrade it with a larger one. And then there's additional force main that's going down, starting about the Seneca Meadows facility, that will bypass that existing pump station and run down 414 with that. So part of that project, Del Lago is funding that work. There's the 414 pump station is being replaced and upsized, and we'll talk, the next slide I believe is Kingdom Road. That project actually is funding the purchase of a new pump station at Kingdom Road as well. So right now, the completion, we're on track to finish the pipeline this fall. The new 414 pump station will be installed this winter.
Where is it going to go from there to get, how is it getting from there to our?
Good question. I think last time I had a map showing it, I don't have it on here, but really from Del Lago, just to trace the source, they've installed a force main below the thruway. I think they tie into the existing Petro has a lift station there. It flows via there's a gravity sewer that goes down 414 to a pump station. That pump station, what we call the 414 pump station, it used to be called the Petro pump station, that's being upsized. There's an 8-inch line that's going to remain in place, so that water will go to the 8-inch line. From that point, once you get to the Seneca Meadows, we're putting in a new line, a new 10-inch line. So that line will chase 414 down about Ballsy Road. So it goes 414 across the railroad tracks, and then goes across 414, and then it'll run down the north side of Ballsy Road. There's an existing sanitary sewer gravity manhole there. It'll discharge into that. That goes across 5 and 20. That essentially feeds the Kingdom Road pump station.
So then what happens? It goes down Fall Street, 5 and 20?
We're not,
Oh,
that's,
okay, that's what
these
you...
questions are well timed.
Okay, Okay, sorry.
No, that's, I know. So really, the question is, the Kingdom, we talked real quick about the Kingdom Road force main. Actually, can you jump? I'm gonna just talk with pictures, do a much better job. I'm gonna drop the mic again. That's okay.
You talk, I'll be your man.
Okay.
Where does it cross the canal?
We're not following you.
Yeah, so what happens right now is the Kingdom Road pump station is located on the north side of the canal.
Right.
Just right over here.
It
Okay.
discharges into an existing 8-inch force main.
Yeah.
I think circa late 1960s, that force main was installed.
Goes all the way
That
down.
force main discharges down Fall Street. There's a gravity sewer, there's a large gravity manhole on Fall Street, I think the corner of Fall Street and Rumsey. And then that flows down Fall Street. The crossing, and the canal currently is underneath the Open Street Bridge.
Right there.
That's how the sewer, that's how the wastewater makes its way across. So that's the only crossing in the system right now. That's essentially the connection between the north side of the wastewater system to the south side where the wastewater treatment plant is. Under the current project, the Kingdom Road station is going to be upgraded at the footprint of the station, but we're going to install a second crossing across the canal that's done using what's called a horizontal directional drilling. It's a very common process where a pipe is drilled essentially horizontally below the bed of the canal. That will come across, and that will essentially be the start of the force main. So the new force main is going to run down River Road. Currently, we've got two concepts on play right now. One is continuing that road that run down Bayard Street. There's a lot of infrastructure in Bayard Street. There's storm, there's water, there's existing sanitary. The town currently is pursuing the option of turning that force main and going down the Ludovico Sculpture Trail. We've had several discussions with the owners of the property. There's kind of the concept right now is kind of a shared project where the town would put in the force main using a lot of non-intrusive methods, horizontal directional drilling. In return, the town would provide a lot of the maintenance for that trail.
Well, but it would literally rebuild the trail, so it was a much nicer upgraded trail.
But I'm in close contact with the owners, and my understanding is they are against this.
We've had some discussions with them after Pat was able to actually go through the details of the design, and last discussions were that
we haven't talked in a while, but the last discussions were very positive. We met down at the trail in South Lucas and met at the trail and walked a bit.
I think you need to talk to them now.
I would love to, but I haven't had any response to when I've tried to contact them. If you are in touch with them, please tell them to give me a call.
thank you.
It'll end up being a better trail than what it is now.
It would be, but
If you were to go down there, you'd have to do a secret review.
We go through, for that particular project, we go through a full seeker review. There's wetlands there. I mean, there's many issues.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. That's
but
why I think they're very opposed to ripping any of that up.
Well, the concept we've proposed would be using the horizontal directional drilling, which they can typically, what'll happen is you have a machine that will drill a pipe under below ground. They can extend that, they can directionally, literally, they track it on the surface so they can understand where the pipe is at any given point. Typically 400 to 600 feet is pretty typical for that type of thing, so they can drill it. Periodically, the pipe needs to come up, they need to dig a pit, but the impact to that trail is pretty minimal as opposed to coming in and, the option would be going down Bayard Street where that would be really ripping up, a pretty busy corridor. I mean, next to Fall Street, that's the next busiest portion of town, so that would, in order to provide that new infrastructure. So it certainly is we kind of, our position is we kind of think it's a win-win, that, we're going
They
to
don't
provide
see it as a win-win. And the question is, can the town do that without their permission?
I'm not a lawyer, but I would say, they own the land.
I don't think that's the intention.
Yeah, I don't think that's,
We haven't discussed eminent domain or anything like that, but I don't think the town was really wanting to go down that road. We were just looking at it more as
Well, I
If
think
we
you
could
need
use
to
it,
be
we
much
could
closer.
greatly improve the trail and maintain it. And rather than having them come to the town asking for help maintaining it as they do for the past 15 years or so.
And they haven't gotten it for a couple of years.
They've gotten quite a lot of help over the years.
I'm
with our
talking about
trail.
the last couple of years. This year, there's been no response to a request. Apparently, they met with you and sent a letter and haven't had any answer about
Seems to be a
maintaining.
pattern, that's been my experience the past couple of months as well.
What's that?
That I've been trying to contact them and I'm receiving no response.
They met with Greg and wrote Greg a letter recently. You need to talk with Greg.
So
You
you
know,
guys need to
these are
have a
negotiations with the private family, and I really don't feel comfortable talking about those
All right.
here.
Yeah.
I mean, and I believe it is a good win-win situation for both of them, and the little contact I've had with them, because I came on board just this year, people have been optimistic. I've had very nice conversations, 2 conversations, but, to state an ongoing negotiations with something that needs to be done, that we think will be a win-win, and
You think would be a win-win.
no, the town.
Yes, that's what I mean.
And the
When I
elected-
say you, I mean the town.
And the elected officials
You keep saying it's a
before us.
win-win. I don't think the owners see it as a win-win, and that's not an issue here, except it's a major thing you're talking about doing, and there's not a common understanding about what's happening here.
I mean, as Pat said, the project wouldn't happen without the approval of the owner, so that's, we're in negotiation with that. Our position is that we think it's going to provide the trail, basically rebuild the trail. There will be, once it's complete, there won't be any evidence. You won't see the pipe in the ground. So
If
that's kind
someone
of the
doesn't want
discussion.
the trail touched at all, we're in a very different place in looking at this. That's all I'm saying. That the trail,
The long and the short is there's 2 options that are on
Thank
the
you.
table that are possible. One of them will be chosen after negotiations and or what, right? So one of those will be done. Okay.
That's correct.
Carry on.
Thank you.
So, did you go back or forward? This was, here's the technicalities of the Kingdom Road. I mean, we've already talked about that.
Yeah, let's move on.
So the next one is the sewer rehab. We'll talk a little bit more detail about that. This is really the primary rehab. This is addressing the aged infrastructure, the leaking manholes, the pipes, the older pipes. So really the intent here is to seal up those areas of inflow and infiltration. We talk about inflow, that's stormwater that flows directly into the sanitary sewer. Infiltration generally going to be groundwater. Some cases it could be stormwater that flows into a catch basin that's not necessarily flowing efficiently, so there may be some backups with that. So we've, in the process 2013, 2014, our engineers, field engineers went out, did an extensive survey of all the manholes, I think I mentioned this before, within the town, cameraed several thousand feet of sanitary sewer within the system, camera storm sewer, just to identify where the issues were. Smoke testing of sanitary sewer. So really the intent there was to identify where the leaks are, and we're in the current process of designing that and identifying the way to essentially rehab those leaks. This day and age, in lieu of ripping a sewer out in a busy area, we can use in situ processes where we can line the pipe in place. The technology for rehabilitation of sanitary sewers, manholes, and pipes has come a long way in the last 20 years. So the intent really is that if we have a sewer that's, the pipe's intact, it's structurally sound, the joints are leaking, we go in and slip line that, or use a cured-in-place lining. There's some areas where the pipe is too small, maybe sagging, so it's not flowing. Those are areas we can go in and probably, on a limited basis, excavate and have to replace. As I mentioned, most of the sanitary manholes, the fixes range from ripping it out just due to the fact that structurally it's not intact anymore. So it might be a full removal and replacement. might be lining the interior of the manhole. It might just be superficial completion where the cover has 100 holes on it, so we'll be replacing the cover, providing a tighter seal on the surface completion to minimize stormwater getting in there. The big thing we mentioned is just straight up elimination. There's catch basins that are tied to the sanitary, so that the big nut as far as trying to address stormwater getting into the system is really going to be the various catch basins. Through the years, the former village and the town have identified these, and as they've come up, they've been addressed. But it's a big system. It's a big undertaking, and hopefully kind of get the last of those that are issues. So I've got the 2 slides here, identify it. The 2 pictures I have over here identify the north areas and the south areas. In general, they're pretty similar fixes. The rehab of the sanitary manholes is throughout both the north and the south. There's limited areas where we're proposing to reline or use carried in place relining. And I think there's a couple areas, we've got some couple additional investigatory steps looking at some potential developments where we want to confirm that there aren't any direct interconnections with storm drains or sump drains. So those are some of the investigation steps that need to happen with this project as well. So this is, I'm almost done. Summary of the wastewater projects. So we'll talk about what these are costing. I think that's obviously we can design it. We want to understand what the cost is. So the Route 413 project in general is about a $1.5 million cost. As I mentioned before, Del Lago's funding that. So that project really comes in, that piece of additional pipe comes in. Really the casino has funded that in order to ensure that they have a means to transport their wastewater. So they've funded that project. There really is no cost to the town for that.
If I may.
Yes.
The cost is being subsidized by the taxpayers because they've got tax breaks that far exceed this 1.5 million. So it's our own money coming back to us.
Yeah,
so I wish you could erase that and say.
Well, I mean, from the bottom line of the town budget, from that perspective, the town's not paying. There's a pipe being put in the ground and the check's being written by Del Lago. That's an accurate statement. So, big picture.
It's coming out of their tax break.
Well, I don't know what, okay. They're writing the check, so from that perspective.
Paid with our money.
So next is Kingdom Road pump station. So that, as we mentioned before, that project, whatever the final orientation of the pipe is going to be, estimated about 1.85 million total. With that, that's going to be a town-funded project, and the need there is to replace an existing 8-inch force main that's aged. Is needed replacement. It's also going to enhance additional capacity. It's going to provide the mechanism to get additional wastewater flow into the currently underutilized wastewater treatment plant. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the economics in the next couple slides. The sewer rehabilitation project has been estimated about $3 million. That again is town funded. New York State has an Environmental Facilities Corporation, which is essentially the New York's environmental bank. We currently are working with them on identifying either market rate financing for the project, or we're looking at getting a grant for that project. We have a grant application that we're looking for basically March 2017. So the cost for Kingdom Road, about $1.85 million. I did mention the financing part of that project, the existing pump station that's undersized, so that will have a similar pump station to what's going on we're putting in 414. That piece is part of the casino project. They've also added that into the project, so that's about a $350,000 pump station that will be installed once the infrastructure is put in place. So the net amount for that project is about $1.5 million. So we basically looked at it, looking at a typical municipal type project. Market rates, 4% is, that's a rule of thumb. Number we've seen as far as an interest rate, funded over, bonded over 30 years, works out to about an $87,000 a year debt service for the Kingdom Road project. The sewer rehabilitation, we did a similar exercise. We looked at the project's currently estimated about $3 million total. As I mentioned before, we're pursuing a Round 3 grant. It's a Clean Water State Revolving Fund grant. That's reimbursable at 25%. Initially, that project wasn't eligible for grant. New York State EFC expanded the eligibility, so allowed this project to be considered. We're looking for a March 2017 consideration for that grant. So if we do get that grant, then that project will be about $2.25 million. Using the same 30-year payback, 4% on a municipal bond. It's about a $130,000 annual debt service for that project. So I think the key thing here is providing a summary for what the costs are. So, looking at the specific projects, ultimately, costs to the town budget. There will be no cost for the Route 414 project. The net estimated annual cost for Kingdom Road about $87,000 a year. The estimated annual cost for the sewer rehab is about $130,000 a year. And I think the big thing to recognize here are there's an annual cost to that, but what those projects bring to the table are, with 414 and Kingdom Road. I've talked about Del Lago. I guess the other project we haven't discussed is 318 development. Route 318, town of Junius, along been identified as Seneca County, Genesee Finger Lakes Regional Development Council, is I kind of identified that corridor as a pretty key development area for the towns of Junius. It's the Waterloo Outlet Mall. Waterloo Outlet Mall currently brings about, I believe, 20, what's Waterloo Outlet Mall bring revenue-wise?
I can't remember the number.
It's pretty, for Seneca County's total revenue, the tax revenue coming off of Waterloo Outlet Mall is pretty substantial. I believe it's near about a third of the overall tax revenue coming into the county. Keeping that outlet mall operational is pretty critical to to Seneca County as a whole. That outlet mall generates wastewater. It's currently treated by the town of Junius' treatment plant. That's a sole server plant. It's a very small plant. It only treats the wastewater from the outlet mall. We've looked at that plant. It's not in great shape. It's a mid-1990s plant. To retrofit, to increase that, to repair that plant is an exorbitant amount. It's much cheaper to put the infrastructure and send the wastewater generator from the outlet mall. We're talking to the New York State Thruway Authority, their service area. It provides for additional development along 318. All those flows going into, will help enhance the flow going into the town of Seneca Falls wastewater treatment plant. Ultimately, additional flow going in the treatment plant, they've got almost 2 million gallons of excess capacity. What that provides, the plant will operate more efficiently. There's additional revenue coming in because people whatever wastewater is coming to the plant, they have to pay an out-of-district user fee. And then ultimately, the more water that comes into the plant, the more efficiently the plant can run. The long-term objective would be that the operational cost for the existing Seneca Falls treatment plant would be a net reduction in the overall cost to treat wastewater. So the unit cost, the hope is these flows come in, increase. There's a fixed cost to operate a treatment plant. There's also a cost to treat each gallon, but the net contribution of that fixed cost goes down the more flow they can come into the plant.
Are they running sewer lines down 318? I know it's not part of Seneca Falls.
Currently?
Yeah.
It's a gas line.
Oh, it's a gas
The
line?
318 project is really, that's under design right now, probably 2017. It'll probably summer 2017, that project will start. But yeah, the work's going on right now is I think it's a natural gas line.
Oh, it's a gas line.
Yeah, Dave?
Well, but sewer income coming in from Del Lago and all those people anyways, it goes into the wastewater, to the sewer budget, you'll probably offset that.
Yeah, that's the point of it. You're exactly right, David. Thank you.
There's additional flow coming in.
The point is
That money will offset that debt service.
Yes.
All of it?
If I may, maybe this is more a discussion with our town officials. There's discussion within the community that spending is out of control, and this isn't to blame the current administration because a number of these projects started prior to a number of you taking. But if you do the 10,000 foot math, Earlier, I heard 3 million for water, the tanks. We've got 1.5, that brings us to 4.5. We've got another 3, that brings us to 7.5. Let's throw 3 to 4 million on a new town hall. The taxpayers, or in the case of water and sewer, the rental people, you know, it's like me wanting to do something to my living room, and the next thing I know, I'm doing the dining room, the kitchen, the cellar, and the outside. Are we spending well beyond our means? And you know, I don't need an answer tonight, but...
Can I address that?
Well, I know, my answer, my question is to the town officials is, from a taxpayer standpoint, we're trying to do everything today.
Brad, what year were you there?
I take the blame for a lot of this thing. We had the wastewater thing,
The tanks, what year were you there though?
96 to 2000.
And they haven't been touched since then.
No, I understand that,
So,
but my
I mean,
point
you gotta
earlier
do the
is,
infrastructure.
No.
That's one of our main things, is infrastructure.
it's called budgeting, Dave.
I understand.
You only have
Okay.
so much in a,
I wanted this to be a real positive meeting tonight.
is
That's-
positive.
That's why I set it up, but we are going to have...
You take control.
We are going to have budget hearings, and I announced all those budget hearings, and I announced them specifically for the public. And please come to the budget hearings, because that's the time we can talk about
But
where this
real quick,
money's
do you
going.
think spending is somewhat out of control? Water, sewer, new town hall? And once again, not to blame this current administration. It seems like, boy, I know what I'm paying in water and sewer, and it's hefty. And I know what we're paying in taxes, and then a number of us, including town officials, are looking at what can we do without revenue from the landfill.
A year ago at this time, the board, a year ago, is giving a break for Lago's payment usage of the sewer plant because they wanted to encourage new development. But they got a discount. That was in the papers.
No, actually, they didn't. I'm sorry.
I have the article
Annie?
with me.
Yeah.
The minimum water and sewer bill in the town of Seneca Falls is $1.54 a day for your minimum bill. That's a soda, that's a coffee at the gas station. So your money is actually being well spent compared to how we spend frivolously on other things that we have. We did not give Lago a discount.
I'm not even worried about
I know you're not, but
I'm worried
Lago,
about
there's been a
overspending.
statement made. If you read our code book from the day that the village had the water and sewer department, you will see that any user over a certain amount, 150 gallons or cubic feet, receives that discount. Gould's receives the discount. Anybody who uses that amount of water receives it. It was not given specifically to Lago to give them a break, period. That's the misconception.
Mr. and Mrs. Taxpayer, his water and sewer rate's gone up in the last 12 months, significantly.
Water has gone up
Okay.
$14.25 for 3 months.
This
That's the
article,
minimum bill. The water and sewer rates were not adjusted by the village for over 9 years. Prior to that, it was another decade.
I
We can't
understand, and I
afford
don't think
to
Brad
pay
wants us to
for
get into minutia.
maintenance
I'm
and
just saying, as a
updating
taxpayer, it
if we
seems
do
like
not invest in our
water,
infrastructure.
sewer,
Could I just-
new town hall, what else is there left to do? We're spending it all at
Brad,
once.
and I understand, but let me,
I'm talking to the town officials, John. You're
Yes,
you're the town engineer.
No, you don't have to speak. And that's why I was very concrete at the budget hearings, about the public hearings for the budget. I want people to come. I want them to look at the budget. You can get a copy of the preliminary budget. You can look at it. You can make recommendations. Those meetings are scheduled. I don't have my
Just real
dates
quick,
here.
as our town supervisor, do you feel we're overspending?
I think there's a number of places we can cut. And I've stated that from day one. But, you know, the budgets are in, and we borrowed almost $1 million. We appropriated $1 million, we borrowed $500,000 and we appropriated $500,000 last year. That's $1 million. I don't think we can continue to do that and stay solvent. I think we have to look at some program cuts, some cuts by attrition, and we have to look at the overall picture. That's my opinion. I have to get the board to agree with that. That's a board decision. And that's why I was very clear on when these budget hearings were going to be held, because I would like people to look at that budget and come and state their opinions and see where we go from there. And so, yes, I do think.
Would you be receptive to people coming to these budget meetings and sharing opportunities for additional revenue streams?
If they had them, yes. And we've also talked on a county level on that. And people came and talked to Mr. Churchill, myself, and Mr. Cronenweider on a county level about sharing some funds there. But again, getting back to this was I wanted to give the town of Seneca Falls an update on where we were at.
And tell you what, a big thank you, because you really brought out that our community is overspending. I mean, well over our general fund. I mean, this, yeah, you can say revenue's coming in to offset some of this, but this is money out of the pocket. You just said we borrowed. What do we have left in the reserves right now? Is that data available?
That is available. I can't pick it up off the top of my head.
$1.5 million, I think.
What?
I think it's about $1.5 million.
Yeah.
But you gotta remember, Brad, when we took that 500,000, that's because they figured the budget at 2.7, which the landfill did not pay. And if you were here that night when I explained that to Kyle Blatt, that was the fault of the town of figuring the 2.7 income. I talked to Kyle Blatt last Monday on this income of this coming year, and he promised me by the end of this month, because they're doing their budget, a figure that we can figure on. Right now, we got 1.4 for the first half of the year.
Yeah, but what you're saying is different than what Kyle shared.
Yeah.
We got less than what
We
he
got
said.
less because the town averaged for 5 years and it came up 2.7, and we
This
didn't
is
get
all good
2.7.
information. I just make, as a taxpayer and as a former mayor, spending is out of control. And it's not the fault of this current administration, but we got problems. And I'd like to do everything to my house as well, but boy, you can't do it all in 1 year.
2 years. I put a roof and siding on.
Looks good.
Well, that's
Thank
why
you.
I wanted to bring up the specific case of Lago and what we're putting in and what it's going to be costing us and the debt service and all that in relation to this decision of a year ago. The headline is the board okays amendment to help certain sewer users. And they made an amendment to Chapter 230 of the Town Code to state the following: in an effort to ensure that the town remains an attractive place for industrial and other economic development, the town adopts a policy of discounted sewer rate for high-volume water users. The amendment does not apply to significant industrial users like ITT Gould's or Seneca Meadows landfill. It would apply to Lago Resort and Casino and Dyer. So we've given them a significant break. And at a time when we're talking about what it's going to cost us and saying that's no cost to the town because they've done this, but we've given them users a big discount that other people don't get. That happened last October, an amendment to the town code.
And it only applies to them.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is an issue, and when you talk about things being out of control, we've made decisions that are not in our benefit. We wanted to give them incentive.
And that's not a question for Lisa.
No, okay, we are talking about the financing,
Yeah.
and that's fair to bring it up, that's all. I don't want to.
But that's also, you know,
Let's
that
bring a
also had
business in.
had to do with,
It's already in. Who the hell were they gonna go if they didn't get
that's
50%
also
of
had to
their
do
water?
with, that's an economic development tool that's not only used in this county, it's used in counties across New York State, whether that's good, bad, or indifferent, and you seem to think it's not a very good thing. And we can discuss that, and we will.
In this case, I'm not
Yes.
saying generally it's not a good thing, that's not my point. I'm just talking about a specific instance.
Thank you.
That's the end of my presentation.
Good job.
Any other questions?